My name is Cale Smith, and I was a member of Mr. Peterson's grade 10 civics class this semester. For our final performance task, we were asked to create a video presentation on our Civic Mirror experience. So here goes. What is civics? Civics is a study of the government and what it means to be a Canadian citizen. It explains the rights and duties that are included in being Canadian, as well as the freedoms we receive along with our citizenship. It elaborates on major political events that we as Canadians are able to participate in, such as federal, provincial, and municipal elections, passing laws, and many other political affairs. What is the Civic Mirror? The Civic Mirror was sort of a computer simulation of a nation. It was basically a game. The goal was to obtain as many status points as possible by completing objectives such as your hidden agendas, which mine was being a socialist, and staying alive by obtaining a certain amount of resources. It includes a government gathering of resources, as well as laws, court cases, and many other real-life occurrences that will happen on a daily basis once we gain more responsibilities. Its purpose is to broaden our knowledge of how real life will work once we gain those responsibilities. We are required to buy and sell materials such as power, food, healthcare, and education in order to obtain the right combination of these certain resources in order to survive. The Civic Mirror also includes a legislative, judicial, and executive branch of government. It includes a vote on who should be the figures of power in our nation, and this vote occurs every 2 years, with each person getting 4 votes. As well, citizens are allowed to request the passing of laws and bills that will either be passed or declined by the 7 members of government. So basically, you could write down a bill that you wanted to be passed and send it into the government, and they'd vote on it. These laws determined what was allowed in our country, how much items cost, and what tiny little silly things we would do as a nation. As an example, whenever we passed a bill, we would have to cheer government on 3, 1, 2, 3, government, because that's a bill we passed. Ultimately, the Civic Mirror was a game that simulates most everything that we as citizens will do once we grow older, more mature, and gain more responsibilities. What concepts in the course curriculum did you notice in the simulation? I noticed multiple course concepts that were prevalent during the Civic Mirror simulation. These concepts included the values and freedoms of citizens. Many values were portrayed in the Civic Mirror, such as education, healthcare, and the environment. Each of these values were very important parts of the game, which could affect whether you did or did not survive. Education and healthcare were mandatory for survival. I needed 2 healthcare, and you needed to obtain a certain amount. As well, the government valued these necessities and placed them at a high price because they knew they were very important to the citizens of our nation. The environment could greatly affect the outcome of an environmentalist game, such as John, who had that as his hidden agenda. If he did not fight to preserve the land within our nation, he would not be able to complete his hidden agenda and therefore not be able to gain status points from it. As well, the Civic Mirror included the concepts of our rights and citizens of a democratic nation. We possess the right to vote and participate fully in our society by being able to request laws and stuff like that. During the game, we voted on who we wanted to be in the government and who was allowed to request the passing of certain bills and laws. We also had the right to possess social and economic well-being. We were also exposed to what the government actually does within our nation, because most people, myself included, did not really know. We learned how much it helps us, such as giving welfare to those under a certain amount of money, which I'd say about 10 people out of our 30-person class were under $500 or something like that, and we would give them a $500 check so that they would be able to buy stuff in the future. And as well, we learned what the government forces us to do, such as give them tax money. Big one was property tax, was probably the most expensive one, and limit what we can do with our money. So we couldn't sell stuff for more than a certain amount of money, and we couldn't buy an overly amazing bulk of resources to leave some for everyone else. Overall, many concepts within this course curriculum were very prevalent during the Civic Mirror simulation. What was your experience like during the simulation? Good, bad, easy, difficult, fun, etc. I found my experience during the simulation, it started off a little slow, but after a few years, which were weeks, it picked up the pace and I finished near the top of the class in terms of status points. I found it pretty fun. It was filled with information and it got really, really stressful when I was trying to find the resources that I needed to survive. At the start, I didn't really understand and I didn't realize that I needed to buy healthcare right away or it would run out. And so I left that to the last trade. And at the end of the year, there was no more. And so one of my family members died because they didn't have any healthcare. And because of that, I lost status points. During the second year, a trading malfunction occurred and I didn't receive the power unit that I needed to power my house, so another person died. It was during this year that I began to understand the rules of contracts and court cases, because I tried to sue Mark, the owner of the power plant, for not giving me my power, because we had a contract stating that if I gave him 8 technology at the start of the game, he would give me this power. But Austin went on my computer, changed that contract, and there was no one there to be a witness, so I just had to suck it up. By the third year, I figured it all out, and I obtained all the resources necessary for survival, and I finished near the top quarter of my class. For the most part, I thought the Civic Mirror was an eye-opening experience, and it made me realize how difficult life can actually be when you have quadruple the responsibilities that I do now, and how incredibly stressful it can be when our very easy lifestyle, because we have no responsibilities now, turns completely backwards and gets really complicated. But overall, I thought the Civic Mirror was very fun, pretty stressful, and really educational. Talk about one of the topics below and how it played out in your experience. The topic I'm going to talk about is supply and demand. Supply and demand within the economy of our nation was very prevalent during the Civic Mirror. As a class, we had to overcome many problems with the lack of resources and money. Many people had to go without these resources, and this caused them to lose status points. Power and healthcare and education were one of the big ones. Healthcare and education, we simply could not produce enough for the 30 some odd people in our class, so every year someone would go without. The first year I was one of those people. And power, we could do something about, but everyone needed power to power a residence and survive. And Mark only had one, but then he built another one, and that helped us out a lot. But the lack of supply made it very easy for the government to ramp up the prices on things that they owned, because they were running out of money too, and there was a very high demand for those things. But if you were quick, on task, and determined, you were able to get those resources before the supplies ran out. But after a couple minutes of the markets being open, and literally a couple minutes, almost all the resources were gone. What did you learn the most from the experience? Communication, how government works, how to manage your money, how to take care of a family, and how to network, etc. The idea that I found that I learned the most about was communication. It was extremely important to have good connections with the other important people in your class, because you could barter with them and create trades ahead of time with them so that you already had the resources that you needed set up to be transferred to your account, and in turn you would give them something. I found the most powerful people in our game were Mitchell, the Prime Minister, because he had lots of money, as well as arts and entertainment hex. So I would trade technology for that, and that would give me well-being points. Nolan had food, so I would maintain conversation with Nolan, so I would get some early on food deals. And just a few other people. They had like security and insurance, and I found those very helpful to stay in touch with them. I also think communication was important because the computers were very slow, sometimes laggy, and required reloading to receive trades. So if you stayed on top of those trades and told your classmates that you had traded with them, then they would see them. But otherwise, they may not see them until after they've traded away all their other ones, because all their other units, because they were like really laggy and you had to reload every time you got a trade. And during